Kia ora, Aotearoa, and hello world. You are listening to the Yeah Nah podcast, the official podcast of the New Zealand Skeptics. I'm Bronwyn Rideout, and with me are my co-hosts, Mark Honeychurch.
Hey.
Katrina Borthwick.
Hello.
And we are welcoming back longtime committee member, multiple-time guest, Dan Ryan. Welcome back, Dan.
Hey, g'day.
Now, this week, Dan, you're going to be talking to us about Highden Coin, which is the newest project from the perennial source of nonsense and disappointment in New Zealand, Highden Temple, outside of Palmerston North. Mark, you're going to be talking about another company that claims to be able to block EMF. Katrina, you're talking about some new research regarding the MOA, or potentially whether we can bring the MOA back through some interesting egg technology, I guess. But before we get into those awesome stories, let's got a couple of things to talk about. First, a nice update about the conference. May 31st is when our late early bird special expires, and tickets will be going up by $20 for all ticket classes. So if you want to take advantage of those last early bird tickets, you got to get in soon. Probably in the next 24 hours, depending on when this podcast comes out. We now also have the Sunday speakers sorted out. We have Liz Gregory with the Gloria Vale Leavers who's going to be joining us, and that may be especially interesting now that Paramount Plus is putting out a new documentary about Gloria Vale, which includes not just the survivors, but also current members of Gloria Vale and their leadership, talking about, their perspectives on the whole thing. And Johnny, who has kind of pretty much been organizing the entire conference on the smell of an oily rag, has also been able to secure us Mark Otley and a couple other academics in psychology from Canterbury. So it's looking to be a really interesting Sunday session. And the final update for anyone who wants to bring in their really keen, skeptical high schooler or undergraduate student. A longtime friend of New Zealand and Australian skeptics, Lee Traynor, has started his own foundation, and through that foundation is sponsoring several scholarships for both the New Zealand Conference and the Australian Skeptics Conference. For the New Zealand Conference, he is sponsoring 20 full-price scholarships. So if your weekend pass is going to be covered by the scholarship. However, people who win that scholarship will still need to cover their own travel and accommodation, as well as any other tickets, such as the SGU extravaganza on Friday and the formal dinner on Saturday. For those who may not be able to join us at the conference, you're absolutely invited to join us on our free Friday night social. That'll be held at the Victoria Free Pub on Colombo Street. You can get more details about the location at conference.skeptics.nz. And yes, if you still want to buy tickets, go to that website as well, and that'll take you to our Humanitics page.
It's like the membership corner has been moved from the end of the podcast to the beginning of the podcast.
I know, but I think it's just good to bring the conference up a little bit because, again, people may want to take advantage on those early bird tickets before they go away forever, or at least go away until our next conference. Now, just wanted to share this story that's been making the rounds for the past 24 hours, and we are revisiting a story that Mark shared a few weeks ago. It seems that we're not really getting rid of Scientology speedrunning anytime soon. So apparently on May 2nd, a bunch of young people stormed the Church of Scientology in Times Square. I think what they did resulted in $10,000 worth of damage, with a 30-year-old security guard having a bit of injury because he got kicked in the leg. Have any of you guys had a chance to come across this story?
Very briefly, I still found it very hard to have any sympathy for Scientology in this one. I can imagine they've tried to make this seem as bad as possible, but Scientology versus a bunch of kids. I mean, the kids win in my heart every time, I think, even when you've got like a couple of dozen kids storming your building. They're doing it for the right reasons. Security guard accidentally got hurt. Like, they're not punching people in the face or stealing property. Well, maybe they are stealing some property.
One story I read said there was video saying that they ran through the hallways and grabbed several items. I think they put some silly string on a security camera. So they may have actually gone away with some free brochures. Free books.
Yeah, and those books are not cheap. Like, when you're a member, you will find yourself spending thousands and thousands on the books and the audio. I don't know whether they sell them on tape or CD-ROM or what these days. But yeah, these things can run into the thousands. And at least, I guess, if you're in Scientology these days, you only have to pay once. There's a whole slew of sad old members who bought all of this stuff. And then the golden age of tech came around where they realized they'd mistranslated some of it. And so they rewrote it all and charged all their members a second time to buy another copy of it. So it's just horrible to see how much those members of Scientology are abused. And this is why it's really hard to have any sympathy for the church as a whole, really.
I've just come across a different article that's saying that the New York speed running has potentially resulted in hate crime charges for two of the alleged participants.
Oh, because then they have to say it's a religion and, oh, okay.
Oh, no, they want to say it's a religion. I mean, they lobbied to be a religion, right?
Yeah, I know they do, but I guess you're just getting in court that they're arguing they're a religion. So what does that look like?
Yeah, no, they did this decades ago. So Scientology is not good, but yeah, they basically they attacked the IRS in various ways to try and convince them they were a religion so they didn't have to pay tax. And this involved a mixture of legal and not quite legal means. I think they used to break into offices of the IRS. They got staff members who basically infiltrated the IRS and joined them, and then they used a whole bunch of legal means. They kept suing the IRS on so many fronts that eventually the what was coined like a pragmatic decision was made that rather than going through all of this nonsense from Scientology, it was much easier just to allow them to call themselves a religion and not pay tax. So yeah, though that's done and dusted decades ago. I mean, it's not a religion. It's a wacky self-help cult. There's no god that they uphold or anything like that. The nearest they have to a god, I guess, is L. Ron Hubbard, their dearly departed leader, who didn't die, just moved on to continue his research on another plane, apparently.
Did he take his books?
No,
they're still in them all. Yeah, they're still in the bookshop for sale. They are.
Oh, I see.
Very much still around.
But I mean, if these are actually high schoolers getting involved, that's kind of pretty serious. So the people who got charged, one was a 19-year-old, one was a 21-year-old, and I think there's a 28-year-old who is being charged with obstruction of government activities. According to Scientology, they broke down a locked door, so it wasn't quite a Scientology run in which Scientology had the doors open and they ran through the back rooms. Apparently, this is a little bit more like a break and enter.
Yeah.
So I was wrong, right? I said it was a flash in the pan and it wasn't going to go anywhere. And no, it turns out the kids have decided that one-upmanship is the way of doing it. And they are, group is outdoing the previous group here.
And I guess if they're expensive things, they were just picking up, even if they're rubbish books, but they cost a lot. That elevates the crime, doesn't it? Because $1,000 book is different from stealing a $5 book, I guess.
Or is it that insurance problem where you're replacing all your underwear actually costs you a lot more to do it new than...
It's the opposite of that, right? Because yes, there might be a ticket price of $1,000 on that book, but there's no intellectual value to it, and it probably only cost them $2 to print. So I think replacing this stuff isn't going to cost them $1,000. It's just that's the price they've set, so they can maximize how much money they extract from their members.
Well, if you went into a bookshop, regardless of what their markup was, and you stole a rare book, even if it only cost them $2, you're going to get pinged more if you steal a really rare book that's worth a few grand than if you steal a secondhand $1 book. Which
now that's getting into the weeds of like the book is worth $1,000 within the limited sphere of Scientology. Does that mean its worth is intrinsically $1,000? Where nobody outside of that religion supposedly is going to pay more than $1 in a charity shop for it. I really don't know how insurance would look at that.
It does sound like kids being goofballs, basically, but probably getting in big trouble.
I guess this is a watch this space kind of story because, every couple of weeks we're getting a new little outbreak of activity. But now I want to move on to Dan. Dan, usually I'm the one who's talking about Highden, but this time we're handing the honor over to you. I think it was, a few months ago, Highden has decided to launch a new cryptocurrency. So please tell us and our audience what you have found out about this new spiritual coin.
Yeah, I've been looking at their, I guess it's a spiritual cryptocurrency. It's called Highden Coin. For those who haven't heard of Highden Temple, they describe themselves as a mystery school for the soul, initiation, leadership, magic, and the creation of soul culture. How many articles have you written about them, Bronwyn? I believe quite a few, eh?
Maybe 4 or 5 articles, and maybe 6 or 7, like maybe another 3 or 4 little updates on top of that.
Yeah. I've been looking at this Highden coin, and their website doesn't have a lot of details, and what details there are is quite wishy-washy. The website says the coins will be released over about 25 years and given to members, and this will help their temple work and building up their community. Currently, you can go and buy some coins on their website. So about 100 coins is worth $3 or just under $3, which is up from 60% when it was released in March. And so I've been looking at the technology, and the coin is built on a public blockchain called Solana, which basically anyone can build their own token. Looking at the blockchain, the token that they created is just plain highly centralized, and there's just nothing special about it. Minted about 7 million tokens, giving about a perceived worth of...
Now, Dan, don't bury the lead. Exactly how many of that 7 million? Like, what's the exact number there?
7 million, basically a whole lot of sevens.
7,777,700 coins. Sounds very numerology to me.
That's very angel numbers.
Yeah, dear, oh dear.
Yeah, magical amounts. Yeah, so giving a perceived worth of $200,000 if you go by the current value of each token. Now, you can create a token like this in about 5 minutes. There's just easy to use tools. Anyone could make this token. So again, nothing special. So looking at the top accounts, about 9 accounts hold 95% of the coins, with about 8% of the supply currently on an exchange where Highden can sell for whatever price they want. On top of being able to trade tokens at any price, they can generate more tokens at any time. They can change the name, symbol, and URL, and all tokens are unlocked, basically allowing them to rug pull at any time, meaning nothing is stopping the owners for selling everything at once. Basically, my prediction, based on other countless tokens, is this will be a failed experiment with very little trade outside their group, and eventually it'll be hidden from their website. Maybe they might create a version 2 and continue the hustle. Yeah.
Kind of like a donation, and most of the donors are basically their mates. And
yeah, exactly. Like, I had a quick look myself, but then I knew that I was somewhat out of my depth, which is why we ended up coming to you, Dan, to do more of a deep dive. But it looks like when you said that they had releases of the coin, the way they did it, because often when you have a coin, you have like the initial coin offering, right? Where you have a whole bunch of coin that you sell immediately. What they did was that they said, well, this is a 49 stage cycle, but we're already, 17 stages in? Yes. So they basically dumped a whole bunch of coin at once, but they didn't just dump it onto the market. It looks like they took that coin for themselves. So there's one account owner, and you weren't able to trace any of these, but one of them has like 1.47 million tokens, and I'm guessing that's going to be Bruce Lyon. Like, he's at the top of Highden. I would be surprised if that wasn't him that was sitting on the most coin. And then there are 7 other people who have 9.5% or 740,000 each. So those are going to be 7 core members of Highden, as you said, Katrina. It's 7 friends who have heavily invested, or even haven't. They might not have put money in. They've quite possibly just been given the coin for free. And then on top of that, the last major owner, Dan, you might have to explain this a little bit. The Radium Vault Authority, is this just how they sell the coins or something?
Yes. So this is a decentralized exchange. They can just sell their token at any price. This has about 8% of the supply, so about 313,000 tokens to basically sell the unknown, unremarkable token.
Yeah, okay. So that, I think it was 613,000 you said in your article?
Yes.
That's 500,000 odd tokens that are sitting there that anybody can buy. So through that exchange, people, any kind of, I guess, people that wander through the doors of Highden can be convinced that for a few dollars they can buy some of those through that exchange. Would that be how it works?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So, I mean, it's not going for a lot of money. What did you had an estimate of the total worth of all the coin that's been released so far? What was that?
So I estimated about 213,000 New Zealand dollars.
So if we look at the main person owning 1.47 million tokens, so about 20% of 200K, so it's about $40,000 that theoretically, Bruce Lyon, if this is him that's the main owner, he's theoretically magicked $40,000 out of thin air that now belongs to him. But of course, the thing with these cryptocurrencies is you can't just sell all of that because the bottom falls out the market. You need someone to buy. Like, if nobody's buying, you absolutely can't sell. Even if people are buying, the more that you put on the market at once, the lower the price goes, because then it's a buyer's market and not a seller's market. So theoretically, this is worth $40,000. Presumably, practically, it's worth even less than that if he wanted to cash out.
Correct.
So yeah, like it's a little experiment, right? It's a little, to me, I look at it and I think it's one of those little hippie things, because you watch Highden Materials and they always talk about, the one world government with that, whatever that project is that some of the Highden people are connected to. And they talk about doing things radically differently and being separate to the government and almost sovereign citizens. It's like, living their own life and doing their own thing. And it feels like crypto is just in that, having their own currency, but it's really small, isn't it? Like, as far as cryptocurrencies are concerned, this thing is tiny.
And I guess I have a question to ask, like, in terms of how Highden is starting out with this coin, is that normal for a new coin, or are most new coin releases significantly bigger?
That's a good question. I think, from my understanding, I think a lot of coins are smaller than this. Like, you don't even get that many people, because a lot of people are out there by themselves going, hey, if I make a cryptocurrency, I can become rich and do a rug pull, which is where, they manage to walk off with all the money other people have invested. So there's a lot of hopefuls these days that I think are doing that, hoping that it's going to make them rich. And most of those go nowhere, but you get the occasional one that does spark off a flurry of interest online. You manage to build an IP or come up with an idea that people really like. And then you can find yourself sitting on millions of dollars really, really quickly. And that's where the rug pull temptation is huge, because you realize that if you don't follow through on everything that you promised with this cryptocurrency or this NFT, if you just take the money and run, they don't even know who you are a lot of the time, because you are just a random wallet that owns a bunch of these coins. And I think with things like this, so there are like burn wallets and things like this that happen with cryptocurrencies. Like, Dan, from what you explained, this is so wide open to them changing anything that, like, even if they had a burn wallet where they promised that they would burn or get rid of coins to increase the worth, at any point they could change their mind and just put it in their own pockets, right?
Yeah, they can. They can create as many tokens as they want. They can sell as many tokens as they want. There's just basically no limitations of what they can do with this token.
But you said they've picked basically a modern platform that allows for lots of cool technological stuff. So these days on the blockchain, there are ways that you can kind of embed code and these smart contracts so what they could have done is they could have injected into this cryptocurrency lots of checks and balances. So limiting how many coins they can release, stopping people from being able to switch things into their own name or change URLs. And it sounds like they've done absolutely none of that. Like, they've got a modern blockchain that allows them to put in these measures that, let their users know that they're serious, and they've not done any of that, right? And I guess we don't know whether that's incompetence or whether that's deliberate as a way to rug pull. It's probably hard to tell the difference.
Hard to say. There's no advanced features being used. From what I could see in the metadata, it was just a very plain, simplistic token that there's just nothing special about it.
They're probably not doing it, as a financial investment. That's probably not what they're aiming for. If, with all those controls, you'd be saying, hey, you can make some money out of this because of all these controls. It sounds like it's more like a touchy-feely thing, like, do this, feel good, give us some money for our projects, believe in us kind of thing. So they don't need the rules, because those rules are just there for different kinds of investors.
Yeah, I can't help but think also that in the back of their mind, though, is that if this does become popular, if the global community of people who like free sex becomes big enough that everybody starts buying it, that the fact that they've given themselves most of the initial tokens would make them a lot richer, at least on paper or in electrons. When people set up these things, yes, there's the ideal of, hey, you can help invest in us. But if you want people to help donate money, you stick a donate button on your webpage. The fact that they've gone for this crypto, I really do think that there will be some hope somewhere that this would make them all rich. And it seems very unlikely it's going to happen.
I have a question. You mentioned how each of these sort of transactions should be reported to the IRD. Give us, I need some basic education here. In terms of crypto in New Zealand, what is the legislation? What are the laws around this in case something did go wrong? Like, is a rug pull completely lawful? If someone needed to report that something was going on with their cryptocurrency, could they report to anyone in New Zealand? Could they take it to the cops? Or are they kind of just maybe hope, fingers crossed, the IRD might do something?
I would assume rug pulls are illegal in New Zealand, but that's not something I've actually looked into. But as for the IRD, any type of trade that happens is a taxable event. So you have to work out the amount of money you've made or lost, and that when you're buying or selling any type of cryptocurrency. So any sale that they do will have to be reported to the IRD. If they actually do it, that'd be interested to know that, but who knows?
Yeah. I think the IRD has a lot of ability with old world investing to be able to look into those and know when somebody owes tax money. So people are very likely to pay tax money because they know that if they don't, they'll be tapped on the shoulder and, hey, we know that you did this. When it comes to crypto, it's the Wild West and they have no visibility. And
not quite. Track a lot of exchanges, at least the New Zealand exchanges that I know of. In this case, since it's a decentralized exchange, I'm guessing they wouldn't be following that particular one.
With local exchanges, then, is there a requirement for the people running the exchange to disclose wallet owner to the IRD? Is that how it works? Because if it's not for that, if it's not that, right, all you've got is a local exchange telling the government wallet 2A647B 11 whatever has had this much activity. That's useless to the government. The government can't by themselves trace that back. Well, maybe the GCSB can, but it's really hard to trace that back to a person.
Most exchanges these days, you have to upload an ID and a lot of details about yourself before even selling any cryptocurrency on it.
Okay, so they will have those details for the wallets. Right.
Yeah, these days, a lot of the main exchanges, you do have to upload various IDs and addresses and whatnot.
How much are local exchanges being used? I didn't even realize we had any New Zealand-based exchanges. Are people using them, or are most people using the big ones?
From what I can understand, they are using the local exchanges.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Thank you for that, Dan. As with anything with Highden, we always want to keep an update. So hopefully, if anything happens with the Highden coin, we'll have you back and you can explain to us a little bit more about what's happening in the back end.
That'd be cool. I'll be definitely keeping an eye on them and see if they grow more than their 21 account holders that they currently have.
Well, I guess we'll just have to wait for the next cycle.
So that's the total number of account holders. So we covered about 10 of them or 11 of them, so that, okay. So, 9 were the big holders, so that means outside of those 9, 12 people have invested.
Yes.
Not a huge amount, is it?
Not at all.
Why are we talking about them?
They're not managing it, but they are trying to be evil.
Again, thank you, Dan. Now, while I guess none of us would use Highden Coin to build our nest egg, we might have a better chance of hatching a moa using some artificial egg technology. Katrina, what is this weird-ass new science that you're going to be telling us about today?
This is really interesting, and it is New Zealand weird science, which is really nice to be able to talk about. But this is basically an artificial egg, and I'm not talking about the little plastic things that you can buy in the toy shop. This is an egg that is designed that actually can rear a baby chick or chickens. So it looks a lot like kind of a space grenade. That's the first thing I think of when I look at it. It's sort of metal with lots of holes in it, and it kind of lights up so that you can see what's going on in the egg. And inside there's a silicone membrane lattice. The special thing about that is basically the great technology that they've developed, is because it allows the egg to breathe. So that's been the big barrier to actually making an egg that a chick will stay alive in from embryo to hatching, is having the ability to breathe, because eggs breathe. So if you have an egg and it's got a baby chick in it and you put it underwater, that chick is not going to survive because the gas exchange needs to happen on the surface of the egg. They've raised 26 chickens using these artificial eggs, putting the embryos inside and then waiting till they're ready to pop out. But the aim is not to raise chickens. We have lots of chickens and we do not need more chickens, especially not with these eggs that look very, very expensive. They are thinking, well, hey, we got this technology and maybe we can hatch a moa bird. And so that is what they're looking at. And so the outfit that's involved with this, so we've got New Zealand scientists, got a leader in there from Colosso Biosciences. And so they've got a Australian-based chief biological officer called Andrew Pask, and he is leading the team. And this is also backed by Sir Peter Jackson, the filmmaker, and in partnership with Ngāi Tahu Research Centre and the Canterbury Museum. So heaps of Kiwi stuff in there. And biosciences is also quite famous for some of their other efforts around de-extinction. So you might have heard of the woolly mammoth efforts. There's dire wolves, dodos. They did manage to Tasmanian tiger. And this is one of those things. They're going, okay, well, maybe we can create a moa. But I guess the challenge here is moas are really big birds. So, emu is pretty big. Australian emu, their eggs are 12 times bigger than a chicken egg. Well, a moa egg is 80 times bigger than a chicken egg. So a rugby ball size. And I'm no midwife, but if you're going to take a rugby ball size thing and put it inside an emu, it's not going to work. So if you're going to hatch something, you need an artificial egg cocoon, something in order to hatch that. There is no bird on Earth that can hold a moa egg. And so you need to get your first moa in order to create more moa. So chicken and egg problem there. So this is the egg that would solve that problem. Only issue is you need two things if you want to de-extinct a species. You need a really good source of DNA, and you also need a direct descendant of particular animal or bird or whatever. Now, this is why there cannot be a Jurassic Parks, because DNA degrades over time. So it's sort of got a half-life, it gets worse over time. And by the time you get to 1-2 million years, there's not really anything left of the DNA. So no dinosaur DNA exists. We cannot de-extinct dinosaurs, just to get that out of the way, because it's sort of the first question that everyone asks. It's like, Jurassic Park, can we create dinosaurs?
For those movies, I get the feeling that's a good thing, that we're not going to get all the scary dinosaurs back.
Yeah, and they did a weird thing, like they stuck frog DNA to cover a gap and, help. We'll talk a little bit about that sort of Frankenstein stuff later, because that does come in with Colossal a little bit. With the moa, do we have DNA? Well, we have extracted some DNA. They have managed to get that out and sequence it, but it's not complete. It's got damaged fragments. So that incomplete genome, so you're actually in a situation where you're actually having to patch it together from other closely related living species. Now that can be done using a CRISPR-Cas9, which is basically gene editing technology that allows you to snip and cut pieces of DNA from other places and put it in. So you could take a sort of a trait from another kind of animal and you can put it in there. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an animal, actually. So they've done it with fish and put coral DNA in to make them glow brightly and things like that, be pretty fish. You can do some pretty radical things with this technology and put it together. But I guess the thing with what Colossal tends to do is they're really good at making look-alike animals. So they made dire wolves, but what's really clear when you dig down into it is it's actually a grey wolf that is genetically modified to look like a dire wolf. So it's stronger, it's bigger, it's got light coloured fur, all of those kind of things. But I guess you come down to the question, is it a dire wolf? The same thing with the mammoths. If you take an Asian elephant and add traits that you think mammoths have, so do you really have a mammoth, or do you actually have an Asian elephant that is woolly? So I guess look-alike things. And they do explain this, they're upfront about this, Colossal, that they're trying to maybe fit some sort of hole in the ecology. This is an ecological gap in terms of putting something that is like that animal back into the ecosystem. But then that creates whole other issues. You're taking an animal and putting it back into an ecosystem. And we know that there've been issues too, genetically modified animals sort of getting to a certain point and then not being able to breed. So sometimes that's not a problem and sometimes it is, but they genetically modified a bunch of, so this wasn't done by Colossal, but it was a different project, bunch of mosquitoes, and they modified them. There was a particular kind of mosquito that pass on malaria. Not all of them do. And this one, they genetically modified them that it will pass straight on 100% of the time, not half the time, and that would not pass on malaria. And so they had about 1,000 and stuck them all together in the lab, and their generation's sort of about 3 weeks. They turn over quite quickly, so you can see what happened. And if within a few months they died out, they stopped being able to reproduce. So if you're going to put something out into the wild to fill a niche, you need to worry about the rest of the ecosystem of what it's going to do. But there might be these other unpredictable things that happen because it's actually not that animal, it's something else. It's been genetically modified. It might not be able to breed. But then there's other interesting situations. So there's, it kind of got overshadowed by some of the other work I think the dire wolves are doing at the time, but it's about a redwood wolf. Redwood wolf, there just weren't enough left to make a viable population. So basically they're all descended from 1 or 2 wolves. And so when that population breeds, they're all inbred, right? They're all brothers and sisters and things like that. That's not good. That can lead to, just dead end genetically in terms of being able to have children and be healthy. So what they did was they took some DNA that they rescued from some of the wolves that had passed away and kind of got them and genetically recreated those wolves, fed them into the embryos so that effectively they increased the ancestral population by, I think it was 3 wolves. So it increased the diversity of that population so they weren't so inbred and so that could carry on. So I think that's a really cool way of using de-extinction on an existing live species where you've got good DNA samples to make that population more viable.
Do you know with that part how many genes they were editing? Because it sounds like for the dire wolf and the woolly mammoth, it's like a few handfuls of genes. But did they manage to edit more than that?
It's like, the podcast I was listening to, she sort of had a stab and said, I think it's like 14 genes on, 20 strands or 20 genes on 14 strands or something, whereas there's thousands, tens of thousands, so it's just you're taking something and changing its hair colour, if you know what I mean.
It comes to the, adding, so for the red wolf to add the genetic diversity, do you know if they managed to make more changes? Because I feel like doing only a few changes isn't making much of a difference. I feel like you'd need to make huge changes to parts of DNA to make sure that you have enough variance that you don't still have that breeding problem.
And I think, that's like real edge case where it's gone from this population is basically going to be to extinct to it might kind of have a narrow, I don't think it's a solid rescue. There's another one with rhino. And essentially there was just a mother and a daughter rhino, and of this particular rhino, and so essentially that population is extinct already because you've got 2 females, right? So bit of a problem, mother and a daughter. That population is not
it's the Walking Dead. Two
Yep.
females left.
Yeah, and they did have sperm from the last 2 males, but they're dead, right? Rest in peace. 2 dead rhino sperms and 2 live female ones. So Rhino Project was raising the test tube rhino eggs from the last 2 rhinos that had been fertilised with the frozen sperm from the last 2 males. But so you got 30 test tube rhinos ready to be implanted into a surrogate rhino mother of, it would have to be a different kind of rhino, obviously, because we've only got those 2. But they only used the eggs, I think, from 1 mother. It's 2, it's still bad. So that population is basically all brothers or all sisters. Colossal came along and they've been working on the woolly mammoth technology at the same time, and they've been using CRISPR to do that. So they came in and edited some gene diversity into those so they were less like brothers and sisters. There's definitely some potential there, and I guess if we bring that back to New Zealand, things like the kakapo, the kaki, which is the black stilt, we've got good genetic material for those species, but they're very endangered. So we could potentially use some of those techniques to get a bit of genetic variation in there, because those populations are currently down to just a few hundred, I think, especially for the black stilts. So there's some options, but then it brings in all these ethical things, because nothing's simple. Bringing back a species. So, you've got a relationship with the land and the animals of the land. Essentially, you're bringing back one of these animals. And so this is something that needs to sort of get past Māori iwi. And to be clear, Māori are not a homogenous group, so you're dealing with a lot of different interests here. But you can imagine it might feel a little bit pet cemetery. You're bringing back something that looks like, ancestral creature, but it's not, or is it?
I kind of got a question on that end. I mean, could you ever reintroduce the moa into the natural environment, or has the natural environment changed so much since it's gone extinct, or has it not really changed much at all, and therefore that reintroduction would go smoothly? What are they thinking? Or are they going to just be keeping these grown moa in captivity?
Because apparently to have a viable population, you'd need about 500 moa, and you'd be sticking them all in a big pen. And, that would cost a lot of money. They could probably get out, but also the environment in New Zealand is nothing like it was, 500 years ago. So, you are putting a giant bird back into that environment with deer and all sorts of other things. So you don't actually know what's going to happen with that. You also don't know what people are going to do when moa are suddenly out there. Are they going to start hunting them? You don't know. And so I guess I was sort of really interested in this de-extinction thing. There is a whole other strategy, which is just a big rabbit hole called the gene drive strategy. So that's where you make the genes pass on to the next generation. So whatever you create, it's just going to carry on, and you cannot stop it once you've hit the go button. That is the one that has people worried. And there is a group of over 90 NGOs that have signed a call for a moratorium on that kind of genetically engineered creature that is just self-propagating the gene out there. And you see that happen with crops and things sometimes. They sort of jump the fence, and that whatever the genetic modification is could get out, and people get upset about that. So that's not surprising. So that happened with those glowfish. So they took the zebrafish, which is basically a version of a lab rat they use quite a lot in science, and they added coral and jellyfish genes into those fish, and that meant the fish came out really brightly coloured. And what the intent was is that they would change colour a bit like a mood ring when they swam through pollution. So you could look at the colour of the fish to work out whether there was pollution in the water. But the problem is they were too pretty. And so they got called glowfish, and they ended up selling them commercially as pets. And you had these big breeding stations that were, ponds where they were breeding these fish so that they could sell it. And there's a big breeding pond in Brazil, ended up getting into the waterways, and they've got a giant forest, which is a bit like a mini Amazon, called the Atlantic forest. It got into the waterways. This was some time ago, but in 2022 they have seen these transgenic fish swimming around in the Atlantic forest. So they are an invasive species. They breed faster than normal zebrafish, but we don't know if they're just going to die out because they're quite easy to, in terms of predators, because they're brightly coloured. Or maybe they'll, create something new with other fish and themselves, or maybe they'll just die out naturally, or maybe they'll stop being able to reproduce. We don't know. But that is an example of where that gene drive succeeded or failed, depending on your point of view. And so I guess you're sort of sitting there wondering, well, there's all these philosophical debates about are we obligated to de-extinct species? Or, should we just stand by, let them go, and if we're bringing lookalikes back, is that really the same thing? And if we spend energy on bringing back lookalikes or de-extincting, is that somehow going to take resources away from, stopping existing species go extinct, because we don't need to worry so much because we can just bring them back later? I think it's all useful information. And I guess coming back to this wasn't about de-extinction, gene editing stuff. This is about the egg. And I actually think the egg's a really cool thing because you can do something with it. We've just got to work out how best to use that technology. So egg, that needs 40 times more egg yolk than a chicken egg, and you can't just make that out of nothing. So we need yolk to put in there, and then we would need the genetic stuff to go in there. We know we don't have a complete DNA sequence, so it will have some other things in it that aren't moa, and then we need to get over there's some decisions that need to be made about whether this is the right thing to do for the people of New Zealand, whether this is something we want to do. What will we do with these moas once we get them back anyway? Otherwise it just ends up being kind of a gimmick, die wolf, we made a couple, but so what? It doesn't change anything.
I was just reading up on online. I see there's a few species of moa, and the smallest one is about the size of a turkey. But I'm guessing we don't have the DNA for the small one.
Yeah, they were specifically looking at the giant moa. I don't know why, but with colossal, everything's got to be really big and flashy. So a lot of what they do,
it's in their name,
look at
isn't
the video,
it?
it's like really, the PR is amazing, and it's all that to drive. That's how they get funding. So I do wonder, because what you're doing sounds really practical, and maybe we could pick a nice little discreet brown bird and we could bring that back, and but I just don't think that's going to be.
I wouldn't mind a small little mower for a pet on my farm. That'd be great.
Yeah. I'll just stick with my electric mower. I think that's as far as my ambitions go.
The giant mower is up to 240 kgs.
That's
a
really
lot of chicken
big.
meat or mower meat.
Wow.
Yeah, the emu wants the mower in their belly, so that's a really big space grenade.
Okay, thank you for that, Katrina. And then now on to our final piece for the night. I have no witty segue here, so I'm just going to hand it right over to Mark to tell us a little bit more about a company called Aries and their EMF pseudoscience.
Your lack of segue, Bronwyn, is absolutely fine, because your first segue was enough for the entire show. That was amazing. So, I'm all good not having one.
I feel that's a backhanded compliment there, Mark.
Yeah. Don't feel a need to do segues, but if you do, go hard. Aries Tech. This is my piece. I'm not sure whether they're doing a lot of sponsorship, but at least, in social media like AG1 that you talked about recently, Bronwyn, but they are a company that's getting their name out there in some ways, that, they know how to play the marketing game. Aries Tech is a technology company that is selling pendants and stickers and little standalone devices, totems maybe, that will protect you against electromagnetic frequencies. So this is yet another one of those companies is selling you something that doesn't work for a stupidly high price and has absolutely no evidence that what they're selling does anything like what they claim. They've been preceded by a bunch of companies, so like Shield seems to be the name of choice. So in the States in the early 2000s there was Wave Shield, that was followed up by Safety Shield. There have been companies around the world, including one in the UK, that offer little USB devices that you plug in that are meant to shield you from harmful. And over here we've had a local company called Blue Shield that I think a few of us will have seen at the Go Green Expo. Blue Shield tend to advertise every year there and sell the little EMF protection devices. And this one, they claim on their website they are the world's most validated EMF protection. And like, I looked through the front page of their website and that alone had so many claims about how effective the product was and how it was backed by science. So like quotes on the front page were backed by science, trusted by millions, real science, real results, the world's most tested, trusted and scientifically proven EMF protection, proven through decades of research, science you can feel safe relying on every single day. Now, the bit that goes hand in hand with this, with saying that their product is tested, then it works, the other side of the coin, of course, is that EMF is bad, that your Wi-Fi, your mobile phone and the signal it's receiving, maybe even the power cables in your walls that are humming at 50 or 60 hertz, these are all producing bad EMF that's causing you problems. And so the front page had a bunch of stuff about this as well. So they claimed EMF radiation from your devices can disrupt your sleep. EMF exposure may lead to brain fog and tiredness. Reduce harmful EMF exposure that may affect reproductive health. And studies show that EMF radiation can contribute to oxidative stress, which affects heart health. So there's no good evidence for this. The claims that it's disrupting your sleep and might mean that you can't have children, there's no evidence that this is the case. There is no evidence that their product is doing anything either, but that doesn't seem to matter to them. They seem to be happy selling their product for hundreds of dollars anyway. And as I said, their marketing is slick. They know what they're doing. It doesn't seem to be YouTube videos. It doesn't seem to be podcasts, unless you guys have heard of anything online or seen their adverts. Do any of you remember having seen adverts for Aries tech?
No, I haven't.
Oh, so the way their marketing seems to be go big or go home, and it is, well, some missteps. So, like, the biggest influencer they went for was Russell Brand, and Russell Brand is very much a
he's
not
horrible.
not a person you want to use for your marketing anymore. He has allegations from several women of sexual assault and rape and other horrific things. He has been charged by the police in the UK for this, and he used to be a comedian who was somewhat funny and anti-establishment and anti-government, but he's gone like Christian, really weird recently, flogging a bunch of stuff. One of the things he flogged to make money with one of the sponsorships was Aries Tech, although he just mispronounced it through the entire weird video that he made. He just called it Aries Tech. Like, he gives so little of a crap that he didn't even bother to learn the name of the company he was advertising. I found an article from the Spectator magazine that described it like this: comedian turned right-wing Christian influencer Russell Brand has discovered a new stream of income, hawking enchanted objects. Brand appeared in a recent TikTok ad for Aries Tech, claiming airports are places full of Wi-Fi and all sorts of evil energies, and so everyone needs a magical amulet from Aries Tech, or Aries Tech as he pronounced it, to keep you safe from all sorts of signals out there. And it was weird, like the video, he appeared out of a bush with a suitcase in his hand. I really didn't understand what he was trying to do, but it was just really odd. So they used one science guy. It seems like all of these companies, whether it be this kind of scam or a multi-level marketing scheme, they'll pick their one scientist who's willing to compromise on their ethics in order to help them hawk this stuff. For Aries Tech, it's Gary Brecker. And Gary Brecker, he's a longevity expert. Apparently he's only got an undergraduate degree or 2 undergraduate degrees in biology, but he self-proclaims to be a longevity and health expert. He has a podcast and other stuff, and he's happy, again, to basically promote anything. And one of the big things he promotes is how amazing Aries Tech is. And I have no idea how much he's getting paid for this, but I bet it's going to be a fair bit. But beyond that, the big sponsorships that they do is, so because they're claiming that it helps with fatigue and brain fog and things like this, the idea is that, sportsmen and women are being dragged down by EMF, and if they use the Aries Tech devices, they can operate at their peak. That this can make the difference that is the difference between losing and winning. And so they've gone for a bunch of sports personalities like fighting. They're into UFC and WWE wrestling. Basketball, they're the official sponsors or official, EMF protection partner of Basketball Canada. Bronwyn, I'm hoping you're adequately dismayed by that.
I'm just going to withdraw my citizenship, and that's going to be the end of it. I'm done. I'm over being Canadian.
Were you ever into Canadian basketball, or is this not a big thing?
No, it's basketball's a big thing. I'm not into Canadian sports. I'm not into hockey. I'm not into curling. I'm not into basketball. I'm not into baseball.
This is disappointing because my next one is ice hockey. They sponsor a whole bunch of ice hockey people, athletics, NASCAR racing. They've even gone so far as to basically sponsor stadia or stadiums, whichever word you want to use for that. But so last year, WWE, the World Wrestling Entertainment, I think it stands for. They were WWF, but the World Wildlife whatever said you can't use WWF, that's us. And so now they're WWE. They had a WrestlePalooza, which presumably is their version of the Lollapalooza music festival, and it was billed as an EMF-friendly match. because they got these Aries devices and they hung them on the four corners of the ring, and supposedly this protected the entire arena from EMF. The Minnesota Timberwolves, which is a basketball team, I'd never heard of them before, but apparently they exist. Their stadium has been fitted out with Aries devices so that everybody is covered. And then they have this Certified Spaces program where you can buy devices from Aries Tech, install them in your office or your warehouse or any kind of building, and they will certify that you've done it properly, that you are adequately protecting everybody from EMF. Now, with this, the point that I like to make was that you'd expect then that there'd be no signal, that you walk into one of these stadiums and your mobile phone stops working because it can't connect to Wi-Fi, it can't connect to cellular, suddenly you're in a dead zone. That's not the case at all. These things, they work just as well. They are just as happy, your mobile phone, your other devices, they'll connect to everything without any problems. This goes right to the point that basically this is Canada reclaiming itself, Canada doing a good thing. It's from Linus Tech Tips, which is a Canadian YouTube channel where they do a whole bunch of tech stuff. So they did testing. They bought a bunch of these overpriced devices and they had a look at them to see, do they do what they say they do? So let's hold something that generates an electromagnetic frequency right next to one, and let's get a device that reads electromagnetic frequencies, and let's see what the signal looks like when the pendant is close by and when the Aries Tech pendant is nowhere near. And unsurprisingly, absolutely no difference. No difference whatsoever. You can't tell the difference in a signal. They even got rid of all other signals. So they went into a special EMF chamber that blocks all external EMF frequencies, and they had a single device. They took all their phones out their pockets and things. They had one device that they basically made a signal on one frequency, and then they looked at that peak with and without the pendant, and it made no difference. They pulled one of these apart, or they pulled a couple of them apart. They treated them fairly roughly. They kind of tried to snap it in a pair of pliers. They took a chisel to it to take the top off to have a look at what was inside. And it's basically a chunk of, they couldn't figure out whether it was graphite or silicon, but the company says that it's silicon, so I have no reason to believe it wouldn't be silicon. So it's kind of like what a microchip is made of, a block of silicon, and they seem to have etched on top of it a little, what they call a fractal pattern. It's a bunch of overlapping circles. I'm not sure it is a fractal. And then on top of that, they've stuck this resin hologram that makes it look cool. And the resin hologram also has the same thing that's etched on it. And it's this fractal pattern that supposedly is doing the magic. And on the Linus Tech Tips video, they tried to read some of the How It Works page to explain this magic. And nobody could understand, and I'm going to try and read a bit of it. Stop me, please, as soon as you get confused. So, how this product works. This is the abstract. So this is the broad overview of Aries Tech's devices and how they work. Here we go. The method for protecting biological objects from the negative influence of technogenic electromagnetic radiation in a wide range of frequencies.
Confused.
Technogenic, right? Like, what's that word? It didn't take long. Yeah. And it just goes on for like 2 paragraphs. So they talk about and they talk about a fractal matrix and a fractal coherent matrix and a self-affine lattice resonator formed from ringed topological lines, a slit-like raster, a universal Fourier transformer that harmonizes the amplitude, and it just keeps going. And they are, a lot of these are proper tech words, right? But it's technobabble. It is nonsense from what I can tell, and from what other people that have looked at it can tell as well. This is not science, but this is something masquerading as science. So it's a whole bunch of nonsense. And so when Linus released the video, Aries Tech were really quick to come back. So they made a blog post that they released that tried to explain what was going on. And the explanation seems to be, well, yeah, of course you don't actually see the EMF changing, because if we did that, you wouldn't be able to use your mobile phone anymore. But what our technology does, because the EMF itself isn't harmful, but there are patterns within it that are harmful, is our product harmonizes those patterns and it turns it into a separate field which helps the body. So here's some of their explanations in that blog post. Aries fractal-based resonator reduces polarization and reorganizes EMFs into forms that are less disruptive to the body. Aries devices do not block or reduce the intensity of EMFs. Instead, it modulates the electromagnetic environment to create a biotropic field. I think science knows what a biotropic field is. I think Aries Tech have made this up, that they say it's a secondary field designed to interact with biological systems. This is why biological tests are more appropriate for evaluating the effectiveness of Aries devices. And this is where it gets interesting because, as I said at the beginning, they say it's the most scientifically validated, the most tested EMF technology out there. And they are doing testing. They're just doing the wrong testing because they claim that science can't measure these biotropic waves and that the EMF doesn't change, so you can't see anything. The testing that they do is on humans. They basically take some measurements from humans and they say, hey, look, these things change. We measured them without the pendant. We measured them with the pendant, and there was a difference. So our technology is obviously doing something. So the kinds of things they magic are oxidative stress, and that can be measured with urine strips. So it's just, changes. So the variability in your heart rate, like, it may be once every second or so, but what's the variability?
The
Measure
randomized, fully blinded.
No, none of that. I can't believe you think they do anything like that. And then they do an EEG, so they measure brain waves. And I think any anomaly, any change, they claim is proof that their device is doing what they say it is. But to me, it's a real cop-out. Like, to me, this is cheating because they should be able to measure it with physics. They should be able to use very simple measurement devices in order to prove that their device is doing something to the MF. But instead, they're claiming that what they're doing is unmeasurable. That this is something, oh no, you couldn't possibly actually see it in any kind of measurement device. And so they've moved from this really simple realm of testing to a really squishy, wet, confusing, complex place to measure, which is the human body. And all sorts happens in the human body. And everything's changing all the time in the human body. So if you're looking for anomalies and if you're looking for tests that show differences over time, the human body is always going to give you that. It's never going to be totally static. There are going to be changes. There are going to be differences. And so that's what they've done. They've measured something where they're much more likely to get false positives. And then they've gone, hey, look, we've got a positive result. This proves that our device is working. And to me, that's just cheating. It's just pure and simple cheating. Any scientist worth his salt would take one look at that and say, no. That is not how you do that. You should find out a way of measuring the thing that you're claiming that happens, not measuring the result on the body. But they're not doing that at all. But it looks cool, right? On the website, you've got someone in a skull cap, you've got someone with a heart monitor strapped to their chest. It looks sciencey, just the wrong science for the job. And it's really disappointing, but not really surprising. In my article, I kind of wondered, is this deliberate fraud? Do they know what they're doing? Do they know that using human biology for their tests is going to get them positive results? Because
Aries is an adult male sheep, right? So basically this is sheep tech. And then you go to their website and it's like, Aries tech is now simply Aries. Sheep tech is now simply sheep. And you're like, are you secretly mocking people? Or did you somehow think that was a cool name that sounded great and didn't realise what? Because their logo is like a circly thing, like that lattice.
It's that little pendant thing, yeah.
It should be a sheep, a ram or something.
There's conspiracy.
Aries, it's a sheep.
The idea that the Illuminati hides in plain sight by putting paintings up at Denver Airport, and Aries Tech is deliberately let you know that it considers their customers to be sheep. I do not think for a second that's the case, but thank you, Katrina. I love that idea. I personally walk the middle ground where I think probably in some places they know that they're doing things the wrong way, but I suspect maybe they just stumbled into doing it the wrong way and they've stuck with it. That, they found that when they tested with biological tests, they were much more likely to get a positive result, that they could read something, that they were seeing a difference, and so they've just stuck with doing it that way, and they've probably got used to throwing out all the results that don't fit what they're expecting. Maybe they just don't know how it works, and that every time they don't get the result they want, that's fine just to throw away the data and start again. And they keep doing it until they get their positive result, and they prove that their device
Give them a drink
works.
of water between the first and the second test.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, there's so much going on, and I tell you, they will not be controlling for hardly any of this. Now, I first heard about Aries Tech, I think, with Linus Tech Tips, and then very quickly after that, I was messaged about WrestlePalooza. Sarah, one of our ex-committee members, messaged me and let me know. She's like, what the hell's going on here? WWE is EMF free. But the most recent time I've heard about it, and the reason I'm writing about it, is because in the last 2 weeks, there has been a new, fairly local announcement by Fiji Airways. And Fiji Airways are now offering a new service called Flywell. And Flywell is a bunch of different nonsense therapies that if you're in business class and willing to spend even more money, you can get this service. And apparently for the first 2 months, it's free on business class. As soon as you've paid for business class, you just get to choose which ones of these things you want. And they've done a bunch of things. So they are offering for their customers, as this is their differentiator. How do we get people to fly with us rather than anybody else? They're doing red light therapy. They're offering some weird energy drink. They've got a leg band that's supposed to promote of blood flow in your legs, apparently up to 400% more blood. I don't think I'd want that much blood flowing through my legs, but this device supposedly really increases the blood in your legs. Tinted glasses and the Aries Tech devices. And I had a friend message me about this article and say, what are they worried about? You know, Wi-Fi on the planes? They're worried someone's on the wing of the plane on their laptop and this is going to cause them problems. But here's the interesting thing I can find here. So Fiji Airways has decided to go full on woo as a way to try and attract customers. But even they aren't putting these Aries Tech devices in the aeroplanes. So everything else it looks like is available on board, but it seems like the only place that they're mentioning that they're putting Aries Tech is inside the departure lounge, the premium departure lounge, and they don't mention them on planes. And my assumption here is that the Civil Aviation Authority of Fiji, being common sense, they've probably been asked, we would like to put these devices on our planes, and the company says that they modify electromagnetic frequencies, and could imagine that the Civil Aviation Authority has gone, no, you're not. You're not putting those devices. They're not going to do research and find out that it doesn't actually work and doesn't do anything. They will not want to take any risk. And so I'm pretty sure that this conversation would have been shut down straight away, where it's like, those devices are not going on planes. You can put them in the airport, but that is as much as you can do. So, you know, it's a small mercy that they haven't had to spend quite so much money on these Aries Tech Zone devices that will cover a whole area. But the whole thing is still disappointing, like seeing just how much nonsense Fiji Airways is now giving to its customers. It is horrible.
Is this a thing that we could do maybe the challenge, give them the 100k challenge against some of their claims?
I'd be worried that we'd have to spend 100k in specialized equipment and experts in order to be able to test this claim one way or the other. We're going to have to buy our own EMF chamber and find somewhere to put it. You've got a farm, Dan. Can we put an EMF chamber on your farm somewhere?
Oh, then we bring a plane with the EMF device to your farm.
Sure, why not? Sure.
Yeah, no, that's a really nice idea. I'm not sure we could test it cost effectively. This would be a really tough one to do on the cheap. But it's just nonsense.
I've also noticed that Aries Tech, they have a page that targets New Zealanders. So maybe we could do an ASA complaints against that particular page.
Yeah, I did see that they have like an EN-NZ area with their URLs, but if they've got a site that it's talking to New Zealanders rather than just a shop site for New Zealand.
It uses New Zealand dollars, but yeah, I'm not quite sure if it talks about New Zealanders.
Yeah, I wonder, like, if they've done a localized page, that would be really interesting. Maybe some local stars. In my article, I had a look. They don't seem to be selling brick and mortar stores anywhere. I don't think that's how they work globally. So yeah, you can't walk into a shop and buy this stuff, but it's cheap shipping online, which is really unfortunate. So it's easy to get hold of over here. Free shipping over $100, which isn't me endorsing it. Don't go and buy this stuff. It's way overpriced. Hundreds of dollars for a pendant, like I think $439 or something for a pendant. It's expensive. It doesn't even look nice as jewelry, and it doesn't do anything useful. It is not blocking EMF. You wouldn't want it to block EMF because the EMF is not damaging you. It's not harming you. It's not a problem that needs fixing, and this doesn't fix it anyway. This doesn't touch EMF. It does nothing.
Wouldn't stuff stop working? Like, am I dreaming of electromagnetic frequencies, like, serve a function sometimes?
Serve a function? Well, I mean, yes, your mobile phone, they serve a function.
Yeah, your computer screen, or like, I don't know. It just seems like that could be a problem too.
Yeah, if they actually change things. But as I said, they've made up this new thing. They've made up a biotropic field, and that's what they're generating. Like, the how-to page is with itself, and the page they wrote in response to Linus Tech Tips as well. As you read it, they make points that are different to each other, that contradict each other, and it's like they're just throwing out any kind of explanation with sciencey words, and it's not coherent. It doesn't agree with itself. Like, some places it says that it's, doing nothing to EMF. Other places it says it is changing the EMF, but it's the kind of stuff that you won't measure with an intensity meter, that you have to be looking at the waveform itself. So they both are and aren't changing the nature of the EMF. And then in other places they're saying that actually they're generating this new biotropic field, and this is what's making the difference, that when that hits the human body, that helps to protect you from the harmful bits of the rest of the EMF. It's just nonsense from beginning to end, and they have no proof. They have some pretty graphs that don't show anything, as far as I can tell, that's useful. I mean, half it flies over my head. Like, the more sciencey words you throw, the harder it is for me to read through it and understand anything. And I'm hoping that one or more of our newsletter listeners does read through it and does maybe do a breakdown and explain a little bit more about how badly they're misusing the science. Sell something that doesn't work.
Using the English language.
Yeah, like Planglish. They did not read the
tropic.
Keeping
do
things
they even
simple.
know what that means, and why are you using the word tropic?
Yeah.
You can make up a word. Don't use not that one. You did a bad job. Go away.
Okay. Thank you for that piece, Mark. We're pretty much now at the end of our podcast. Just a really brief membership corner for our 2 in-person events. First, we have Wellington Skeptics in the Pub. They will be meeting again on June 12th at 6 p.m. at the Intercontinental Hotel. And then the Auckland Skeptics in the Pub will be held on June 2nd. They're back at the Dyson Fork, and they'll start off at 6:30 p.m. If you have any comments, questions, queries, kudos, or concerns, please email us at news@skeptics.nz or podcast@skeptics.nz. That's all for this episode of the Yeah Nah podcast. We'll be back with more skeptical news in a fortnight. Ka kite!
Akite.
See you later.
Bye.